Hey, welcome back. In this one, I'm going to share with you my top 10 tips after my vegan transformation. Just for a little bit of context, we zoom out here so you can see the comparison, these photos a little bit. This is me, left-hand side. Look at the smart casual combo there, right? The shirt-tie combination looking good. Young Rice looking good. This is me back in 2015. I don't know if these photos do this justice. You give me feedback on this in the comments, but would you believe I'm actually 16 or 17 kilos heavier in this first photo on the left-hand side here than in that photo in the middle, the central photo? 16 to 17 kilos heavier. Again, you let me know if you can kind of gauge that from the photos. I don't think you can, but let's call a spade here. I think the lighting is very flattering in that first photo, admittedly, but my face, you can see it, it's considerably chubbier than my face today, than my face in that central photo, or even the photo on the right-hand side, of course. Look at the neck, right? The neck and the head, it's like a thumb. I look like a human thumb there. No, I don't mean to insult. Like, this is me. I'm talking about me here, but I'm calling a spade a spade. My parents, my family in particular, my parents especially, I remember one particular conversation saying, Ryan, your neck is so thick now. Haven't you taken all this gym stuff too far? This doesn't really look healthy, right? And of course, ignorance is bliss. I was burying my head in the sand. I was trying to get big and buff and jacked. So I was just ignoring that. But of course, in hindsight, they were absolutely right. And I soon realized this. We're going to jump 5 years on here to the central photo. This is summer of 2020 when I was in Prague. And you can see, I think you can see in the face, you can certainly see the neck is a lot more slim. And I think personally, healthier looking now. You can see that I've leaned down a bunch. This is after I'd lost the weight. I started making YouTube videos around this time. And we haven't got a body comparison. Sadly, I don't really have a before photo for my physique, annoyingly. That'd be so nice to have. But rest assured, I've lost a bunch of weight. I think that's very, very visible. Let's jump ahead again. I've done this on purpose, of course. Another 5 years to 2 months ago. My brother took this photo. This is when we're in Thailand together. First thing you'll notice is what a lovely tan, golden and crispy. What a lovely tan, right? I think it's fair to say, right? I'm not going to get carried away with myself or true self-indulgent here. I think it's fair to say you can see that over the last couple of years, I've gained a little bit of muscle. I've added a little bit of muscle to that frame versus that central photo 5 years ago. I've actually leaned down further. I know this for sure, but I don't think the photo does this justice necessarily. I think I'm sort of maybe 4 to 5%, no, maybe 3 to 4% body fat less nowadays. And so just sort of this compounding effect after, I just want to show you guys, like, this is the last decade of my life that I've been doing this, and of course documenting my journey. Sort of zoomed out and summarized very quickly here. Just this sort of Kaizen, the Japanese term for continuous improvement, like not doing, just slowly plugging away, not doing anything extreme, not doing anything crazy, still living my life as well as trying to live a healthy lifestyle, not being so dominated by sort of health and fitness in my mind, making it really sustainable for me, but just these slow, steady, incremental improvements. And so, yeah, these 10 insights that I've got to share with you in this video today, I just want to show you that, like, this is the backstory. This is where these are coming from. So yeah, hopefully this will be really useful to you today. Let's put this on the screen so my head isn't in the way of some of the text as we dive into this. So insight number one that I want to share with you guys, one, fat loss does not have to be hard. It does not have to be contrary. This is a huge misnomer, contrary to what a lot of people, very sadly, this really disempowering belief. Like, fat loss doesn't need to be this crazy, brutal sacrifice. It's not a walk in the park, but it doesn't need to be this brutal sacrifice. All you need is, number one, a moderate calorie deficit. That's all you need. Number two, you actually need to then do it repeatedly, right? It's no good if you just do it for a week. You need to follow a moderate calorie deficit consistently. And the good news is, like, you don't need any crazy stuff. You don't need to starve yourself. You don't need like a heavily restrictive diet. Every diet approach, of course, has rules, and understandably so, but you don't need anything absurdly restrictive. You don't need to skip meals or do intermittent fasting or cut out your carbs altogether like keto. A healthy plant-based diet for me was enough. It was enough to just put me in a sensible and very sustainable, that's key, calorie deficit. And this is because, thanks to the, number one, low calorie density, thankfully, of so many whole plant foods. Number two, the high fiber content as well of so many plant foods. And that combination is such a winning formula, such a cheat code for weight loss, because you can get full from so few calories comparatively versus if you're eating lots of animal products, I argue, and lots of very heavily processed foods, certainly junk foods, but that's pretty obvious. That combo of low calorie density to high fiber content, you can see why that's, I don't think I need to explain this. You can see why that's a cheat code from a fat loss perspective, because the satisfaction effect that these foods can have, I think, is incomparable. And that is why a plant-based diet is easily the most healthy and sustainable way that I personally discovered to lose weight. And I just want to destroy this idea that fat loss is this mysterious, uncertain, elusive, and very challenging, very brutal thing to kind of get your hands on and to really master. I don't think it is. It's not easy. It's not a walk in the park to stay consistent with it. But the idea that it's difficult, the idea that it's not simple and not straightforward is such BS in my mind. And this was a huge learning for me. That's why I'm getting so amped up about this. It's just huge learning for me because I think back then, back in the day, 10 years ago, I was projecting my idea that weight loss and body transformation was this brutal struggle. I was projecting that idea and it was blocking me from seeing how straightforward the process actually is. It's just a calorie deficit. Like all of these crazy rules that all the gurus tell you that you must follow, and every guru has like a conflicting rule, so you get really confused. Nonsense. Like the only rule you need is just a calorie deficit. And I recommend you have a more moderate, sensible, conservative calorie deficit. And then there's just a bunch of different ways to, to peel the orange, right? You can try keto if you want. I don't recommend it, but there's all these different diets out there to get you in the calorie deficit. But let's not beat around the bush. There's no magic diet. It's a calorie deficit that makes it work. And a plant-based diet for me was an amazing way to do that. Insight number 2, not all healthy foods are fat loss friendly. In the plant-based space, especially, you'll hear this common slogan, just eat plants. It's a common motto, just eat plants. And the idea being that if you just eat whole plant foods, you will lose weight. It's that automatic. Eat whole plant foods, you will lose weight. Well, we know it's not that straightforward. Well, at least that's what I've come to realize. It's not that straightforward. We know from the previous slide, no, it's actually about being in a calorie deficit. You can't just eat plants. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not going to lose weight, even if you're just eating plants. Does that make sense? I think I quickly realized this, woke up to this after when I hit my first plateau, actually, after going vegan back in 2015. I lost a bunch of weight when I first went vegan, hit that first plateau, and quickly realized, well, I don't think it is enough to just eat plants. I need to go beyond. I need to consider portion control and calories and things like macronutrients later down the line. And the truth in my mind is that some foods simply make it harder to actually be in a calorie deficit than others, given their calorie density. So things like nuts and nut butters, seeds, dried fruit, granola, etc. These are widely and rightfully considered healthy foods. I don't do the air quotes sarcastically. They are rightly considered healthy foods because they're so nutrient rich, but they will increase your calories pretty quickly if you eat them liberally because they are so rich in calories, all of these foods. I still eat them, right? Some of them, especially like nuts and seeds, I eat them daily because I feel they are actually essential to me for nutrients. So I don't cut them out altogether, but you can't eat them as liberally as you would something like strawberries or broccoli or kale or slices of carrot, right? So just be wary of these foods that contribute a lot of calories to your diet despite still being healthy. What's next then? Insight number 3. Oh yeah, of course, carbs are not the enemy. They are one of 3 essential macronutrients alongside protein and fat, as you likely know. And the carbohydrate macronutrient, though, particularly is the misunderstood one, it feels like, right? People call junk food carbs when said junk food also contains a bunch of fat, chemicals, additives, and they just reduce it to carbs, like donuts and pizza. Oh, carbs. They're not carbs, they contain the carbohydrate macronutrient. But they also contain a bunch of other crap, excuse my language, but it's true, and loads of calories as well. And I just think that like these lazy food labels, like carbs, protein, fat, they are not food groups, they're macronutrients. And that's the point I'm trying to make. And rather, if you focus on healthy whole food carbohydrate sources like greens, grains rather, such as our oats and rice, fruits, vegetables, surprisingly to people, contain a very large percentage of carbohydrate. So when people criticize carbohydrates, they're criticizing vegetables, can you believe, by default. Beans, lentils, potatoes, sweet potatoes, etc. Right, these have all, for me, in the last 10 years, been absolute staples, and I think played a really important role in my journey over the last couple of years. And the nuance is that calories, carbs, decide whether you gain or lose body fat. Like with anything, you just don't want to go over the top. You just don't want to go overboard in terms of portion sizes, okay? If you're eating the right quantity of carbohydrates and you're eating them with the right things, you're going to be just fine, right? You're going to lose all the body fat you want to. It's when you go over the top. So if you're adding cups and cups of rice to your dinners, yeah, the carb source is the problem, not because they are carbohydrate rich, but rather because it's contributing so many extra calories. You see that distinction? Does that make sense? So yeah, number 3, definitely carbs are not the enemy. Lose that idea. You can feel full, satisfied, get all the macronutrients you need because you're eating carbs, and still lose weight, absolutely, regardless. Because you understand the nuance that actually it's about this calorie deficit thing. It's not about, I have to avoid carbs, I have to keep low fat, I have to eat lots of protein. They're just macronutrients. In the hierarchy of factors that affect weight loss, they are below calories. That is the bottom line. Anyway, ramble. Insight number 4, eat 1 to 2 servings of legumes per day. This is not something that needs all that much explanation because I know a lot of my audience are already on board with this. So beans, peas, lentils, I count tofu and tempeh as our legumes here since they're from soybean, they're soy derivatives. And on the screen, you'll actually see, this is my little sushi poke bowl here. You'll see some of my shelled edamame beans. This is delicious. There's a little sushi bowl that I sometimes do. I was doing a lot back in the summer at least anyway. But yeah, legumes, they're a great source of plant protein, as I'm sure you already know, but they're also high in fiber, and fiber keeps you fuller for longer, reducing overeating and controlling your fiber intake. So get those in, really, really important. Number 5, big one here. This was a huge one for me personally. I'll explain why in a second, but limit snacking between the meals. This is someone that used to like get really religious about snack time when I was younger, and having dessert, and particularly with dinners, the idea that it wasn't really a dinner if I didn't cap it off with a sweet treat, a little dessert at the end. Like, that was something really, really big for me. I had to be, as a response to that, I had to get quite strict with myself on snacking, on not snacking, excuse me, that much between my meals. And the key to this for me personally was, number one, you need some discipline, quite obviously, to not snack between meals. You need to be able to say to yourself, no, we're not doing this. Like, we're focused on our goal, etc., etc. But number 2, actually making your main meals satisfying enough in the first place, and that can dissuade you from feeling the need to kind of snack and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of quote unquote dieters that follow really, really aggressive calorie deficits mistakenly. They don't mean to, but they're following some really extreme diet approach. Their calories are getting driven so unsustainably low to where they're so hungry. We've all experienced this. I certainly have. We're so hungry after meals. So no wonder you're going to go and trough and graze and snack on a bunch of food within an hour or 2 of your meals, because you're driving those calories so low. Many of the times that I think about food between meals in the past, many of the times that I used to think about food, it wasn't because I was actually hungry, though, let's be honest. It was because I was bored, or I was stressed, or I wanted some entertainment, or I wanted a little pick-me-up. And yeah, as such, today, I only really try to eat maybe one, maybe at max 2 snacks between my meals per day. And that's pretty easy for me because I do feel really satisfied and nourished from my main meals, and I do love my diet. So that's pretty, I've got that down to kind of a fine art now, and I keep them quite modest. Those 1 to 2 snacks, I keep them quite modest in size. Might be a piece of fruit or 2, might be a bit of oil-free popcorn, maybe something like a plant protein shake. I'm not grazing mindlessly like I used to back in the day. I'm not eating the super high calorie stuff like the bar, even healthy stuff like Lara bars and dried fruit and nuts. Like, these aren't bad foods. Again, like with the slide, a couple of slides back, right? These are high calorie density things. They're not bad foods necessarily, but if you're kind of throwing them into your mouth quite mindlessly, you're suddenly eating 100, 200, 300, 400 extra calories per day. So yeah, as I say on the previous bullet here, like, you can easily add loads of calories to your diet. So for me, this was a big one, limiting the snacking between meals. Number 6, not all processed foods are bad. Okay, time for the super contentious one. If you found nothing contentious so far, this is the super contentious one, right? I eat things like bran flakes, as many of you know. If you follow me on Instagram, I talked about this week. Whole wheat or rye bread, sometimes sourdough. Some of the whole wheat or brown rice or bean, like pea-based pasta dishes. Pastas I like multiple times per week, and I discern no discernible change, excuse me, is what I meant to say, in my physique. So yeah, that's been really nice to eat those things and still enjoy it. And these are still like this. I'm not talking about burgers. I'm not talking about pizza. I'm not talking about ice cream. I'm not talking about sodas, right? These are processed, but they are the more, I would say, intact. I think that's the term Greg uses, but the more intact processed foods that still maintain quite a high fiber content, certainly for processed food, a really high fiber content. And they're still actually relatively low in calories, like brown flakes, absurdly low in calories for a cereal. So that's why I use them, because I consider them like a green light, a bit of a free pass. I don't, I acknowledge that some of those particular products might have some extra added nasties thrown in. And I try to avoid like the brown flakes with loads of added ingredients, but I'm willing to make some concessions on this and have some of these healthier, I argue, processed foods. And it makes my diet more enjoyable. It makes it more convenient when I can just throw some bran flakes into a bowl sometimes, instead of having to take 10 minutes to cook oatmeal, which is not a lot of time, but every now and again, that's much easier for me. As always, final bullet here, like, it's a question of quantity. Like, how much are you eating, and what are you eating these with, right? So if you're taking your healthy whole wheat pasta and then you're throwing loads of cheese on it, loads of cream, loads of bacon, you don't want to, you can't really blame the pasta for that as opposed to the whole dish, right? And there's other things going in. But you catch my drift, right? It depends on quantity. It depends on what you're using those things with. But some of these sort of processed, certainly carbohydrate sources, have been really, really helpful to me over the last couple of years, and really make my diet more enjoyable and really convenient and practical in moments. Speaking of practicality, I didn't actually mean that as a segue. Number seven here, insight number seven, practical, not pretentious meals. Many of you have heard me talk about this concept already. This one is easy for me because I've always loved, before even being vegan, I've always loved simple cooking. I know it's something though that a lot of folks struggle with. A lot of you watching this will sort of self-diagnose as being foodies. You'll appreciate that label. You'll resonate with that label of being a foodie. And so this is maybe something that, well, something definitely that I want to include for that reason. The vegan stuff isn't booming, admittedly, as much as it seemed to be a few years ago, but there's still loads of new cookbooks. Every year I noticed there's loads of new cookbooks all the time. More and more people starting cooking, fancy little cooking pages on Instagram. They're showing admittedly beautiful, beautiful looking food dishes everywhere you look. But I strongly believe there's this sort of, what's the best way to word this negative correlation, frankly. Negative, yeah, it is a negative correlation between following really elaborate recipes and losing body fat. And for me, losing fat was all about consistency and it was about repetition. Those were such crucial themes when I reflect for me over the last 10 years or so. Really, really important to me just to have consistency and repetition. And I can't be consistent with anything and I can't repeat a meal again and again if it's really complex, right? I need simple meals that can easily integrate into my schedule no matter how busy it is. And I also needed, this is a strange one, but I also needed, in a strange way, to not make everything about taste all the time in my mind. Like the more and more I fed into that sort of inner foodie, again, don't know how many people resonate with this. The more I wanted to add like X, Y, Z ingredients to my meals and steadily add up those calories and steadily make the meal more complex and add 10, 20, 30 minutes to the cooking time. Again, it's starting to become unrealistic. It's starting to contribute too many calories to the overall diet. So I just want my stuff to be plain. That's why I say on the screen here in the second bullet, like I will take, I know not everyone agrees with me on this, but this is just my whole philosophy. I will take 7 out of 10 in taste for a meal. That's good enough for me if it's simple and practical, rather than that 10 out of 10 delicious meal that actually takes like an hour to prepare and uses 20 different ingredients. And it's not only more time in the kitchen, but it's also more time and complexity in the grocery store. So yeah, my stuff is so ridiculously unfancy, as you can see. This photo on the right-hand side is just a tofu scramble. I've thrown in some veggies there. There's a little bit of fruit on the side. Seasoning was nutritional yeast, salt, and paprika. Like, it's easy, so there's no excuses. And my stuff, like I say, is ridiculously unfancy. In maintenance, it might be cool to be a little bit more elaborate and add these things with more calories to your meals. And so I can get away with this. I say get away with this, that's not egregious, but I can do that to this day. But if you're in a really intentional phase right now and you're really looking to get a particular health and fitness result, I really love this idea of sort of practicality and not being too pretentious with food. What are we next? Yes, insight number 8 is all about supplementation. We'll do this one quickly because it's pretty actionable. Great thing about eating lots of whole foods, of course, is that you're going to get a wide variety and a good amount of nutrients pretty effortlessly. Obviously, if your diet is absurd, I've just talked about repetition, but if your diet is absurdly repetitive, there might be some blind spots. Like if you're always eating the same foods, maybe you're missing out on magnesium or this or zinc or whatever, because you're always eating the same foods that check lots of other boxes, but maybe they miss out on potassium, vitamin C. You catch my drift, there might be blind spots. But generally speaking, if you've got a reasonably balanced diet, it doesn't need to be crazily diverse, but a reasonably balanced plant-based diet, I think this way of eating is incredible. It has been for me by way of sort of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and so on. So I get the bulk of my nutrition from whole foods, and that's my nutrients from whole foods, and that's always been my mentality. And therefore, I see supplements as a bit of an insurance policy or a gap filler, let's say, because there are still in my mind, second bullet here on the screen, some questions about the bioavailability and like efficacy of absorption of supplements versus whole foods. So in my mind, I'm always thinking whole foods are my main source of nutrients, and I'm going to use supplements. I like supplements, but I'm going to treat them in my mind like a bit of an insurance policy. They're a gap filler. They just sort of close things up and guarantee I'm doing the right stuff. Insurance, like I say, this is not prescriptive, but I personally take, coming on to the more actionable stuff, I personally take vitamin D, quite a high IU dose. I like above about 4,000 IUs. DHA, EPA, omega-3 supplement from algae oil I like, and vitamin B12. I take methylcobalamin. I take those 3 items daily. There are arguments for others, and there are periods where I've taken others in the past. Zinc, calcium. I was going to say calcesium, which is calcium / magnesium all in one. No, I didn't mean that. Zinc, calcium, maybe an all-round multivitamin I've taken in previous moments in the past, but those are the big 3 anyway that I've been consistent with for years now. So that's my supplementation game plan. Penultimate, number 9. It's the first exercise one. We've been doing a lot of food. I wanted to throw some exercise in because this is important. And exercise, sadly, doesn't really get touched with a barge pole, I feel, all that much, admittedly, in the plant-based community. And it matters, right? It counts, it contributes. I think we all agree that nutrition is by far and away the biggest sort of lever that you can pull by way of health outcomes and fitness outcomes. But certainly, yeah, exercise is the second, third, fourth lever in that row. And we've got sleep and rest and hydration and things like that. But exercise is up there. It certainly needs covering. So in particular, the formula that really for me has worked so nicely and been so sustainable for me is slow go plus strength. What do I mean by that? Well, I love my tennis, as many of you guys know. I did martial arts for 3 or 4 years. And training for both of those things could be quite intense. Well, really intense, especially the martial arts, the Muay Thai stuff. It was super intense. But honestly, that's just every now and again, because the bulk of my exercise over the last couple of years has been very, very gentle cardio. Like, I love walking because for the past 10 years, since all of my adult life, I've lived in cities. So I've had to walk and I've grown very fond of walking. It feels weird if I have a day where I don't do that much walking. I don't like that. I'm so used to doing that. So I love my walking. And when I don't often do cardio in the gym. I find that ever so dull, admittedly. I prefer to just play a sport in the first place. But if I am doing my cardio in the gym, I'll just get on the recumbent bike or incline on the treadmill, and I'll just go at those things. And I don't mean running, I just mean walking, but a decent incline on the treadmill, high incline on the treadmill. So it's a little bit more challenging. But I'll just go at those things at a very, very steady pace. It's always low heart rate stuff that I do for cardio to this day, largely. And this slow go style of training that I'm always talking about, it's amazing because it burns calories, number one, but it does it, and this is the thing I love about it, it does it without requiring crazy fitness levels or risking injury because you're doing something so intense, or spiking your appetite because it's so intense, like running, swimming, cycling. Those things really, I've noticed with me in the past, especially running, really spikes my appetite. That can encourage overeating. Which, like, you think, oh, do more exercise, that'll be better for weight loss. Not if it encourages overeating because you get so hungry, right? Like, that's obviously an exception to the rule. And that can make it so much harder for me to kind of stay lean and lead down in the first place. So, yeah, you don't necessarily need to do all the things I've just covered. You could just start with 5,000 steps a day. That is a really good, actionable amount for people. It doesn't have to be anything crazy like the very arbitrary 10K steps a day that seems to get recommended on Instagram constantly. And that's the formula that's worked so well for me, especially in the past year or so, combining that then with some strength training, like 2 or 3, doesn't have to be anything crazy, strength training sessions per week. I have a basic lifting routine actually that I've written into a PDF, a free document for you guys. I'll link that down below so you can have a look in the description box, click that link, have a look at that if you're curious. But that's what works so nicely for me. Like, I don't spend hours in the gym. My sessions are an hour at a time, and like, even throughout all the lockdown stuff, I was doing lots of home workouts as well. So you don't actually necessarily need a gym membership. My Slim and Sustain clients don't need a gym membership. They do strength training, but they do it all at home with my guided workouts. And so my exercise tutorials. And so, like, this is pretty low commitment stuff, right? You don't need to be in Orange Theory 5 or 6 times a week, sweating your head off and seeing black and white stars because you're about to faint because it's so intense, or risking injury. Like, nothing crazy. Again, you guys, if you've been following me for a while, you know my whole philosophy: slow and sustainable trumps fast and extreme. That's what I'm all about, because that seems to be what facilitates for folks, and certainly in my own life facilitates genuine behavior change, rather than all this extreme, aggressive, really fast stuff all the time. So that's what I do for exercise, and that's been a really great complement to this healthy plant-based way of eating for me. And finally, number 10, I've shared hopefully a lot of practical, what you find actionable stuff today. I want to talk about mindset very quickly here. Number 10, I really love this no shortcuts mentality that I've kind of naturally developed. I haven't had to enforce it, but through mistakes, through learning from my own mistakes, hopefully, I've developed this kind of no shortcuts mentality. And that's been, I think it's strung everything together really nicely. Like, nutrition knowledge is one thing, but if you don't have the mindset, if you don't have the right mindset, that nutrition knowledge is virtually useless because you're not going to stay consistent. And building habits and behavior change takes time. That's the first thing to say. If you quit after your first plateau, or the first time you screw up, the first time you binge on your diet, you're not going to get very far, are you? And I've always thought that true transformation and personal growth, it happens on the inside. It's not the external stuff. The external stuff tends to follow. It's a bit cliche, but it does, the internal stuff. And I've found it very, very helpful at tricky, low moments, doubtful moments, moments of low motivation. I found it very helpful to remind myself in my journey that as much as I'm doing this, have you guys still got me? Sorry, I got a little notification on my screen. Yeah, as much as I'm doing this for kind of the vanity aspect, admittedly, I needed, as much as I wanted to change my body, excuse me, I needed my mindset to change as well. And I know a lot of you will resonate with this, like my habits, my relationship with food. That wasn't a process that I could rush, right? I was trying to undo years and years of really bad habits around food. And hey, admittedly, I'm still not perfect with this. It's just been Christmas, right? It's just been New Year. I haven't been perfect with this over the past week or so, but I've stuck with this. And year after year, my relationship with food gets a little bit better. My stories, my habits around food, when I say stories, my beliefs around food and my body and even around exercise gets a little bit more and more positive and empowering and productive. And I've always thought, like, if you want to be slim, if you want to be fit, if you want to be, this is how I've rationalized it to myself, Ryan, if you want to be slim, fit, healthy for the rest of your life, um, you need to lose any idea that you're going to get to your goal in 2 months. You have to get to your dream weight in 3 months. You must have abs. Ryan, you got to get that six pack. This is what I used to tell myself when I was younger. I want to have abs. I want to have a six pack before that summer holiday. Once I lost that impatience, I was able to naturally adopt much more sustainable, much more mentally healthful thinking around weight loss and around body transformation. And so that's why I'm finishing this final bullet point of, slow, predictable, sustainable. I'd also throw in realistic trumps fast and extreme stuff. The no shortcuts mentality. Take your time with this. And frankly, that's what's changed my life. It wasn't, the remarkable, crazy 2 month transformation or anything like that, because we know what happens to those people. We see it with our loved ones. We see it in our own behavior all the time. We fly right back up the scales, right? Let's see what happens to all the folks currently on Ozempic in a couple of years' time. I wish them all the best, obviously. Don't mean to sound malicious towards those folks, but I just know where this goes. If you're not actually changing your behavior, where are you going? Where are you going? You're going right back up the scale. I hope not. That's what we're going to tend to see. That's it. So I hope you found this useful, guys. If you need more help losing weight, you can eliminate all the guesswork and hire me as your personal coach. I'll tell you exactly what and how much to eat so you don't have to figure all this stuff out or stress about it for yourself. I'll show you what to do for exercise with my slow go methodology, and I'll hold you accountable, most importantly, and provide that close support every step of the way. If you're interested, you can learn more about what it looks like to work with me by clicking the link below. Fill out the form on that webpage, and I'll get in touch with all the details for my next slim and sustain intake. And it's worth saying, coaching with me is highly personalized, as many of you know. So I'm only taking on 3 new clients per week now. I've reduced it from 5, so we're going to 3 new clients per week, so I can focus more and more on individual personalized work. And January, for many of you at the time of me making this video, January, as you can probably imagine, is absolutely crazy in the health world, in the coaching world. It's absolutely crazy. So right now I have 7 out of 12 spots remaining at the time of filming this video for January, and these will go. It's not a scare tactic. These will go very, very soon. I see it every year. So fill out the form on that webpage. I'll give you all the details about reserving your spot. Okay, hope this was useful, guys. Take care. See you in the next one.